Let's go ahead and get going. I think we have a quorum in the room. If everybody would sit down, we can take the roll. Get this thing going.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, we've got a handful of bills. I want to try to get rid of them if we can today, or want to not get rid of them, but hear them today. We have 2 hours. We want to try to get as many done as we can because rules meets at 10 o'clock, so that'll be our drop dead time. I'd like to not have to meet on Monday if possible, so we don't have to. The first bill is Senate Bill 346. Subramanian, is he here? Okay. Next bill is Senate Bill 664 from Senator Stewart. Is he here? Okay, 247 from Senator McPike. And I just got last night, you can do it from here, a note that if we report this bill, it has to go to finance. So Senate Bill 247 from Senator McPike. Turn your attention to Senator McPike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the bill dealing with displaced workers. What it does is ensures that when you have a service contract dealing with buildings, cleaning, security, very common things that you'll see in this building, that when a contract is awarded in transition, the workers have that window, they've got that opportunity to be employed. Mr. Chairman, I do have a substitute, and so move it.
Okay, there's a substitute, and that was not distributed to the committee before now. Okay, so we've got a substitute. Is there a second to adopt the substitute? Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Okay, please explain, focus primarily on the differences between the substitute and the bill we've all looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with the substitute, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer 2 amendments, and my apologies, but there is some additional language from line 68 to 69 to strike that.
Strike the language on from lines 58 to line 69.
68 to 69, and then, Mr. Chairman.
That's just like section 5.
That's right.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, on line 71, after employment period, strike the remainder of line 71 through 73. So basically, and I'd move those 2 amendments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, hold on a second. On 70, after employment period on 71, strike the remainder of 71, 72, and 73.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Does everybody understand those agreements? You're striking lines 68 and 69. After employment agreement, you're striking the rest of 71, 72, and 73. Do I have a second on those amendments? Okay, all in favor of those amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the net effect of those amendments with the substitute are basically the employee gets that 90-day transition period. It removes language that guarantees employment after that 90-day period. So there's still obviously any cause of action. But the biggest thing is for these workers and families is that they get the opportunity. So many families have built and revolved around where their place of employment is. Some walk to work, and so a change of contract is a major disruption of life, Mr. Chairman. The substitute before you applies to both public and private contracts, and so that is the substitute in the bill now before the committee.
Okay, it's my understanding it's a 90-day period for service employees, for both public and private employees. They'd be able to keep their jobs for 90 days after a change in the ownership of business. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, does everybody understand the bill? If we move the report, we've got to refer it to finance. Have we had a hearing on this bill yet? Okay, well then 3 minutes aside, 3 minutes for, 3 minutes against. Starting right now. Anybody that's for the legislation, come on up.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for...
Pull the mic down, yeah.
Okay.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. And members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Alexandra Al-Mukhtar. I'm here to testify on behalf of 32BJ, SCIU. I stand in support of Senate Bill 247, which would grant Virginia localities the freedom to pass worker retention laws, also known as displaced worker laws, if they determine them to be right for their own labor markets. These laws can also help maintain continuity and quality in the services that the public receives and can minimize unnecessary taxpayer expenditures on social service costs attached to unemployment. The worker retention framework permitted under this bill preserves a high degree of managerial control, ensuring the employer's right to downsize their workforce if they determine they could perform the work with fewer workers, and also their right to terminate employees for cause at any time. Employers could also terminate any employees with or without cause following the 90-day transition period. As amended, the legislation would focus on the ability of local governments to pass protections to workers in public and/or privately owned mid to large contracted services. It also clarifies that private homeowners and small businesses will be excluded from any local ordinances requirements. Any building property under 75,000 square feet and residential properties under 50 units will not be covered under the definition of covered location. By passing this legislation, Virginia does not actually impose worker retention requirements. Instead, the bill provides a framework for local worker retention legislation and authorizes localities to adopt their own laws within this framework. The framework is based on well-tested laws in states, cities, and counties around the U.S., some of which have been in place for several decades. By enacting this legislation, Virginia lawmakers can grant localities a critical tool to make their economies work better for their own labor markets. On behalf of our members and all working families in the state of Virginia, I urge you to support Senate Bill 247. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Okay, people that are opposed to the legislation, come forward. Okay. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, reacting to the third version of this bill and the second hearing, but want to make clear what we're saying is that if you are receiving poor service or you have a current contractor and you choose to use a different contractor, that contractor has to keep on the employees of the former contractor. They may also have to keep on their current employees. I understand that we've stricken number 5 from the menu of options the locality has. In number 3, you still have to tell them you're going to be their employer, so I'm not sure how that's different from providing them a written offer of employment if that's what we were trying to get rid of. Understand that we've now applied this to certain covered locations. I would say that goes against the policy that you set on Monday where you decided you weren't going to target warehouses because Virginia has invested in supply chain businesses, and we're now again targeting warehouses, which you declined to do on Monday. Finally, I would say if I am a sole proprietorship under this bill and I am a single employee and I lose a contract, I can now get myself hired by the next contractor that has that job under this bill. I would ask you to oppose this broad legislation.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Okay, as I said before, if we move to report, it's got to go to finance. Report and refer to finance is one motion. Are there motions?
Second.
Okay, got a motion to report and re-refer to finance. Are there other motions? If not, open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Ayes 8, no 6. The bill's in Senator Lucas's gentle hands. Okay, the next bill is Senator Servell. You have 3 bills. What, did Supermunion ever get here? Or Stewart? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is the Republican docket on after this?
Stewart was number 2 on the list.
I said, is the Republican docket on after this?
I'm just going down the list. Senator Servell, 253.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.
Supermunion's here. Hold on a second. We'll take care of him. 346. It's your bill. It's your bill. Supermunion. 346.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning. We've not had a hearing on this bill, have we? We've had Yes, we have. We've had
a
witnesses.
We've had a couple,
So
Mr.
just
Chair.
tell us about the changes you made
Yeah,
in the bill.
Mr. Chair, does the staff have the substitute?
There is a substitute. Okay, all in favor of the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so tell us about the substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the background here. As I mentioned before, we're just trying to save about 120 solar projects across the Commonwealth. The problem has been the interconnection costs as well as delays. We tried to go back and work and find some way to get peace in the valley. I don't know if we got there, but the concerns there were 11 concerns about this bill, and we met 9 of them, and then the other 1 or 2 we essentially just tried to meet halfway with the other stakeholders that raised the concerns. So basically what we're doing, any projects that are subject to the SEC's modified parameters, so any project that's from 250 to 1 megawatt, 250 kilowatts to 1 megawatt, was initiated subject to the modified parameters, where they would end up, instead of 0, they're going to pay $175 per kilowatt for internet connection costs. And we started at 0. There's no penalties as well for the utility. This is now a Section 1 bill. It's a lot more simpler. And the other thing we're trying to do is not get in the way of the Commission's authority. And so when the Commission issues its final rulings, this bill sunsets. And so that's basically what we're trying to do here, is just keep it simple, but also try to both have the solar companies put in something instead of 0, but at the same time still be able to make these solar projects viable. And this was based on conversations with many solar installers across the Commonwealth. We're trying to see the highest they could pay while still keeping their project viable.
And there's been an attempt to negotiate with all the parties, right?
Yes,
There's
first.
still opposition to this bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McDougal.
so I see on line, because we just got the substitute, so none of us have seen this before. So on line 13, the $175 per kilowatt hour for interconnection cost, what is it traditionally? I mean, if you're not subject to this, how much would it cost now?
So before the parameters change, in most instances, it was nothing or $100
Please
for.
identify yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Alden Cleanthus with Norfolk Solar. I'm one of the impacted industry members, and I'm also speaking on behalf of the Distributed Solar Alliance. In most cases, it was nothing or $100 for a smart meter, or if it did require upgrades, our worst case scenarios were between $5,000 and $20,000. So at $175 per kilowatt, the minimum project impacted, which is a 250 kilowatt project, you're talking about, am I doing the math right, $43,000, something like that. So it's right up there at our worst case scenario prior to is what we agreed to.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McDougal.
so is that today? Is that if you were connecting today, that's what the
Yeah.
cost would be?
No, if we connected today without this bill, it would be a minimum of $275,000. That's what the modified parameters against us are. Yeah. So this does bring down the cost for us and allow us to go back to work. Most of us have been out of work for 14 months.
For somebody. Senator Obenshain, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, so just to make sure I understand, so that cost is coming down now, and the ratepayers pick up that cost, not the person that is receiving the benefit from this project? Shifts the burden. Is that accurate?
I would disagree about who gets the benefit of these upgrades, because they are grid upgrades, and that's part of what's being debated at the SEC. They're asking us to put a $250,000 panel at a substation miles from our project.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
So right now, the SEC has the ability to make these determinations. Is that
The
accurate?
SEC is in a proceeding, and we've all been halted for 14 months. So what we've asked them is to have a deadline for that proceeding to make its findings and allow us to go to work while that happens.
Are there other questions
Yes,
from
Mr.
the
Chair.
committee?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake.
Yep. So who is this bringing the cost down for? Who is this bill supposed to be bringing the cost down for?
Projects from 250 kilowatts to 1 megawatt.
So
there's
major,
about-
so
Solar
big
development.
solar
development,
projects,
yeah.
solar people.
Solar projects, yeah.
Senator Obenshain.
So I'm curious, and I don't know I don't know who to ask this question of, but this says that the state corporation, this is imposing on the State Corporation Commission an obligation to conclude its proceedings by a date certain. Now, I'm just not aware of us ever telling a court or the State Corporation Commission, you have to finish a case by, X date. Is a patron aware of us ever doing that in any other setting?
So this is going to sunset on July 1st, 2025. I don't think it's forcing the SEC to finish its case by then. The bill is going to sunset by then, but I do think it's going to ask them to initiate the case, certainly this year. We want to get this, because we want to get this moving.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Obenshain.
as I read the provisions from lines 23 to 26, it says the State Corporation Commission shall issue its final order, so on and so forth, no later than July 1, 2025. Am I misreading that?
So it does say that. It's in the law now that they have to start this proceeding this year. That's
Start.
in the code. They have to start it this year. And because this affects all of the things that we're talking about now, we're asking that it be done no later than next July.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Obenshain.
I mean, this isn't asking, this is putting in code that they must conclude a case by a date certain.
Yes, but I think what we're also trying to do is get to a final resolution on this, right? So we don't want this to
Understand.
govern
Thanks.
indefinitely.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we're talking about the spread cost, and first off, I think it's important to note that a lot of these projects are actually our own public schools that have projects that are pending, that are getting hit with $250,000 charges across the Commonwealth right now. And so it's not like big solar, it's actually a lot of our public industry, our public schools and projects that are held up that did not have $250,000 sitting around to complete the project when this came out. So but to the cost, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding, even at this provision, you theoretically could have one that overpays and one that underpays. And this essentially creates a pool of funds that actually spread some costs, because you could have a connection that is right next to the facility with very little investment that's needed, and ones that are further away. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, thank you, Mr. Chairman, the cost theoretically is indeterminate because it could be positive or negative by project theoretically as applied. And so it's tough to do because you're spreading this cost over multiple projects. But I think the point that the patron's getting at is that these are our own public projects that are getting hit with additional fees. And I think he's done a good job at trying to connect the dots on how to resolve this issue. And if we already have directing a start date of an SEC hearing, I don't know why we can't put parameters of a year and sunset it, or if there's a problem with it, simply make sure it sunsets when the final order comes out.
Senator McDougal's got a question.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about what line 15 means, but Senator McPike's question caused me to have another one. Are all these projects in Virginia that are being done? So is there, Mr. Chairman, is there restriction in this language that requires them to be in Virginia? Could somebody interconnect from West Virginia or Maryland and then the cost be absorbed by everybody else?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
That's
Mr. Chairman.
how I read it.
Senator McDougal.
The next question is, what is on line 15? It talks about a different option, and that is different ability. So I guess the solar installation has the choice in their sole discretion to interconnect to a non-exporting electric generation facility. What is that do.
That's not our sole discretion, and that was actually language that the utility asked us to add. There have been instances, and that is the practice in the case, that if you put solar on, that will never export from that site. That is, it's used immediately, even on its highest peak production day. It doesn't leave the site. Then it has the option of interconnecting at no cost, and that was direct language from the utility that we incorporated. That was part of the negotiations.
Subramanian.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really wish we could see these drafts before the meeting so we could work on them and fix them before we're here trying to do this with everybody waiting to have bills heard. I would just note that one of the problems with the language is it talks about a final order but doesn't seem to contemplate appeals, and typically an appeal takes a year, and that's also a problem here. You can't have a final order and then have an appeal pending for a year and then have another final order a year later or whatever. I mean, these things take time to resolve, and I share Senator Obenshain's concern about telling a court when it has to do its work. That's just not how we do things here because our judicial branch takes time to resolve these things. And Mr. Chairman, I have some edits I could suggest to try to fix this. This is the third time we've heard it. I've been scribbling some things. I don't know if you want to take it by temporarily so I can fix it up or we just want to deal with it. But one idea I have, Mr. Chairman.
If you've got an idea to fix it up and you think we could take it by temporarily, maybe Senator Stewart.
If I could just articulate it really quick for the committee.
Okay.
The idea would be to say that the act expires upon the issuance of any final orders, the conclusion of any appeals, number one. Number two would be to grant the SEC the authority to award relief retroactive to July 1 of this year for any projects that are interconnected during the pendency of the proceeding. That way, part of what could be considered in the case is retroactively picking up costs if the SEC would determine that's an appropriate resolution. That's just an idea I had. I don't know if it works, but it's one way of dealing with the concern. I'm not sure whether the parties are willing to take the risk during litigation of advancing this money or whatever, but that was just an idea I had.
Well, why don't you take the bill by for a few minutes and try maybe work with Senator Surville, come up with some amendments, and in the meantime, we'll take up Senator Stewart if he's here. Senator Stewart. He's on the way. Okay, the next bill on the list are Senator Surville's, but he's gone away. So after Senator Surville, Senator Marston, 450. Could it says the proxies aren't open or currently permitted? How can we change that, Hobie? Okay, Senator Marston, please turn your attention to Senator Marston, Senate Bill 450.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It occurred to me in the last few years working on towing bills, the vast differences around the state as to what localities charge for towing. Some people have very generous ones. Virginia Beach, I think, is up to $200. Arlington was at, below 150 or 155, something like that. Different philosophies about towing, and we're talking about trespass towing here, not public safety towing. So the idea here is to send this to the SEC to have them study it. I had asked them last year if they could help the industry generate a document that we could measure just what their costs were so that we could, here in the General Assembly, come up with an estimate of what different towing regions should charge. And they just ran out of time, were unable to do it. But they are willing to take a look at trespass towing rates around the Commonwealth and create a document that really deals with all the elements you're going to deal with: time and distance and cost of equipment and employee compensation and health care, all of those things. And this is what the SEC does, and they're willing to take a look at it, and they feel like they can absorb it with their existing appropriation.
General Assembly seems to mediate all these towing disputes, particularly ones out of Arlington County. And this bill asks the SEC to take a look at whether or not they can do it, because this is not something they do. Nobody does it, but something short of the General Assembly makes sense. Is this something you all can figure out? Mr. Bolstad?
Just get added to the document. Just add this.
No.
See it on the.
It's been here from the very beginning. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, we have had conversations with Senator Marsden during the interim. There was a number of individuals from the commission staff that had conversations with him about that. And to the extent that the General Assembly directs the commission to look at this issue under the language of the bill before you, of course, we would do that.
Okay, are there any questions of Senator Marsden or Mr. Bolstad? Are there people that feel compelled to speak to this bill, one way or the other?
Matt Benka, representing the Northern Virginia and Richmond Towers Association. You all here have heard rate increases for 20 years now, and it's become a royal pain in the neck for everybody.
Yeah.
We would absolutely, all this bill does is that it allows the SCC to come up with ideas for us to do this in the future. It doesn't say that they have to do it, and as long as the SCC works with us, we will try to make it as easy for them as possible. So we fully support the idea and really appreciate Senator Marsden coming up with it.
Ms. Parker, you need to speak as well.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Elizabeth Parker with Troutman Pepper Strategies representing Arlington County. We also support the bill.
Okay. Anybody got anything to say on the committee, or are there any motions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator DeStef.
I will tell you that Senator Morris and I have worked on this for a long time, back and forth, and I've never heard everybody stand up in agreement on the towing stuff at all, ever. So I'd like to move to report this fine bill.
Second.
Motion to report. Is there a
Second.
And there's a second. Unless there are alternative motions, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, Senator Marsden, congratulations. Your next bill is Senate Bill 454.
Yep, a little bit different bill here, Mr. Chairman. I would move the substitute.
Okay, there is a substitute. Let's see. Is it the one dated January 30 at 9:29 a.m.?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of that, of adopting the substitute, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 454, the substitutes allows a process for Appalachian Power and Dominion Energy to file petitions for prudency reviews with the State Corporation Commission for the recovery of certain small nuclear reactor project development costs. The substitute represents a number of changes requested by various environmental advocates and the Poverty Law Center and agreed to by the utilities. My understanding is that because of all of the requested changes by certain groups were agreed to, many of them still oppose the bill. The substitute makes the following changes. On line 14, it limits the use of legislation to one SMR facility per utility, but each SMR facility may have multiple SMRs. Starting on line 15, the substitute eliminates references to construction. This is not going to be paying for any construction within the definition of SMR project development costs. That was in the previous version. On lines 28 and 30, the substitute requires the utility to demonstrate to the SEC that it is evaluating the U.S. Department of Energy funding opportunities so as to reduce the cost of SMRs to customers. On lines 32 to 38, the SEC can impose reasonable deadlines for the utilities to place an SMR into service. If they do not meet such deadlines, then the utility can be required to sell the permitted site and credit the sale to customers. There is an exception if the SMR facility was to be built at a previously existing nuclear site. Purpose of the bill. Small modular nuclear reactors are nuclear reactors that can provide reliable, around-the-clock, emissions-free electricity and help meet the goals of the Clean Economy Act. The bill establishes the opportunity for Dominion Energy of Virginia and APCO to request that the SEC approve SMR project development costs. The SEC retains complete discretion to approve or deny recovery. And we have worked very hard, Mr. Chairman, in this legislature to get the SEC back in control of a lot of our energy projects. The bill does not address approval of construction or operating SMRs. Dominion Energy, Virginia, a Phase 2 utility, and APCO, a Phase 1, would still need to file for CPCN with the SEC under Virginia Code 56580D. The SMR project development legislation will support efforts to build SMRs in Virginia and take advantage of federal funding for these SMRs. These carbon-free generating resources can support reliable electricity to Virginians regardless of the weather or the time of day. The SMR project development legislation will support the meeting the clean energy goals of the Virginia Clean Economy Act and the Virginia Energy Plan. Mr. Chairman, what this also does, and the 35,000-foot view of this, is that it takes a lot of years to get through the federal nuclear regulatory process. And all this does is allow this process to get started under the guidance of the SEC. What I fear will happen if we don't take action like this to get this process started, in 5, 6, 7 years, somebody comes up and says, hey, we've got the technology, we've got the safety, we've got the cost down on these things. You know, states can make up their mind. We would be so far behind the 8 ball and starting a 6-year process then, when what we need to do is be ready to take advantage of these companies who are ready to deploy these things, and then we can make our decision as to whether we want to do it without having to wait a number of years. It's all about getting to the head of the line and putting Virginia first in terms of the supply chain for these when they become a reliable and a good source of energy.
Under this bill, whether we take advantage of it or not, the cost of evaluation, design, engineering, federal approvals and licensing, environmental analysis and permitting, early site permitting, equipment procurement, and authorized rate of return would all be passed on to the consumer before before anything happens.
I believe that is correct. There is a certain amount of risk here, but I have faith in American technology, and we need to get moving on this because we're already seeing a number of problems getting clean energy deployed here in the Commonwealth.
And I agree. To get to the carbon-free nuclear is going to have to be part of the equation. But let me ask you, in Idaho, where the only SMR project that has been attempted to go forward did not go forward, did those costs include construction, or did they just include these things?
I am not sure. There's perhaps somebody in the audience who could answer that question. I'm not real familiar with Idaho on this, but you know, we're not going to. The SEC is not going to, get started on this until they feel it's a prudent thing, to do.
Okay. Are there questions for Senator Marsden?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
Mr. Chairman, just speaking of the bill real quickly, there is actually another program going on through the Department of Defense Air Force Base in Alaska, and they have a 2027 return date. DOD is looking at all their military installations to become self-sufficient as they go to cleaner means of energy development. And so this is a big step for them as well, and they've got that clearance and they're moving that forward. And they have to be self-reliable and cannot continue to rely upon the energy from other sources in order to be operational ready. So I think we need to start setting the footprint. I thank Senator Marsden for bringing the bill forward.
Okay, are there questions? Senator DeStef.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of the bill, Mr. Chairman, the Navy's been doing this since Admiral Hyman Rickover back in the early 70s. They've proven that it's safe, reliable, and both above water and below water. The Navy's pushing to continue to do a clean energy independent modular nuclear reactors. And this is similar to what we've done on the ships for over 50 years, 60 years. And I'm just saying, sir, that this is a great approach, and I fully support this. Thank you.
Okay, well, normally we'd speak after the two sides have spoken, but 3 minutes per side. Those people that are in favor of this, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have 3 minutes. 4 online. We got 4 people online, too, so.
Chairman Deeds, members of the committee, I'm Larry Jackson with Appalachian Power, and I'm here to speak in favor of this bill. Excellent introduction of the bill and what it does. I would like to reiterate that this is not about the actual construction of any nuclear reactor. It's only about the early site permitting. With Appalachian Power, we're particularly concerned about the rate impact any of our projects have on our customers. The way this is designed is that we'll spread the cost of this early site permitting over 5 years and recover those as the Commission sees fit. That way we don't have a large rate impact at the end of the 5 years, but we spread it over the 5 years as we're doing the permit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm Bernie McNamee with McGuire Woods Consulting representing Dominion Energy, and we support this bill and appreciate the Senator and his work in making this bill come forward and working ways to provide greater protections for customers while allowing the company to move forward with pursuing SMRs. In answer to the question that you had and others have commented about where else is this taking place, in North Carolina, under North Carolina General Statute 62110.7, it allows the current recovery of project development costs essentially for small modular nuclear reactors and other reactors, and Duke is moving forward with that with their Bellows Creek project. So this is something that is taking place in our neighbor to the south. And it's an effective way to help make sure that the utilities can keep planning for the future to meet future needs for the economy and for the needs of the customers. And another benefit of it is, besides being able to work on these projects and make sure they're moving forward, both in terms of acquisition of the site, potential long lead time equipment going to the NRC, the effect is by having current recovery as we move forward, it can reduce the rate shock to customers instead of having all these costs accumulate, and when the project goes into effect, suddenly all those costs hit customers all at once. So this is a reasonable process in order to smooth out the cost to customers, make sure we're making the investment that can support them in the future, and ensure that we're going to have reliable power 24/7 and be able to meet the clean energy goals.
And I thank you, but please pause the time for a second. I was interested primarily in the Idaho situation where there were a bunch of stranded costs that the consumers were stuck with. How did those include construction or just costs like this?
Well, the municipal utilities, they did pull out because the costs were going up like every place else because of inflation, all the long lead time. But the actual technology, it was approved by the NRC, and that technology from NuScale is still something that's moving forward. But you're right that there are stranded costs because
there was about $16 million of stranded costs, but did they include construction?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. There are only about 35 seconds left, so.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, Virginia Manufacturers Association. This is a homegrown technology. We've manufactured this in the Commonwealth for nearly 60 years, a version of this, to the Senator's point. There is a project that you should look at, Ontario. It is currently being deployed. The SMR made in Virginia, invented here, is being deployed there. You'll know in 2028 what it looks like, Mr. Chairman. This is entirely a supply chain that we own, including the fuel. And this is exciting for us. We encourage you to support this bill.
Thank you. And be very brief, maybe just state who you are, who you represent, and whether you're for or against.
Ethan Betterton, Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We support the bill. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Tom Cosgrove, HII, in our Nuclear and Environmental Division. We support the bill and appreciate Senator DeSteff's words about the work we do at Newport News.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Aristides Loomis, PhD student, Virginia Commonwealth University, Department of Mechanical and Nuclear Engineering. We support this bill.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Christy Morton with Two Capitals Consulting, representing the Roanoke Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we support the bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have 4 people online, and we're out of time, so just tell us who you are and whether you represent a group and what your position on the bill.
Erica Gray, you can unmute, turn your camera on, begin.
I'm trying to turn on my computer video. For some reason it's not starting. Let me see what I'm doing. Here, it's not right. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We're out of time. Tell us who you are, who you represent, and what your position on the bill is, please.
Well, can you hear me, Senator Dees?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Good morning. committee members and Senator Deeds. Senate Bill 454 is a little more than a federal money grab, good for the nuclear industry, but puts Virginians on the hook for unknown costs and risk for these
if you're again,
experimental.
we're in people that are for right now. So you'll have to get back in line for the people.
Sorry, do you want me to wait?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Okay, people that are for, if you're online and you're for this, please turn your camera on, identify yourself, the group you represent, and just tell us you're for it.
Hi, this is April Way with the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium. We support the bill.
Thank you. Are there others?
Barry Butler, you're still muted. Still muted.
To minimize time, Peggy Melota, PhD student, also from Virginia Commonwealth University in Mechanical and Nuclear Engineering, and I'm also here to help support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Barry Butler, Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance, home to Framinton and BWXT, heavily involved in small modular reactor manufacturing, and we support the bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is that it? Okay. Well, we're going to add 3 minutes and 12 seconds to the opposition. So the opponents or people that have another point of view, please come forward. You've got 6 minutes and 12 seconds. But that doesn't mean you have to use all of it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. I think I can clear up one of the questions that was asked about whether the new scale started with recovering construction costs. They did not start construction. And our understanding, if you go online, it was stated that the new scale project doubled in price, and that's why the investors pulled out, and it was abandoned last November. They had gone through part of the federal licensing process, but not all of the NRC licensing process. So new scale was supposed to apply for further NRC permits starting in January. So I sincerely doubt that they've recovered any construction costs. It did not begin construction. This bill is not about whether or not you like nuclear energy. It's about the substantial financial risks and who bears them. So to understand the risks, let's just consider the following. As has previously been stated, no SMR has ever been built or operated to serve the electric grid. We want to remember what happened in South Carolina. Back in 2007, the South Carolina General Assembly passed similar legislation allowing advanced cost recovery for a nuclear facility. The state poured $9 billion into the VC Summer nuclear reactor, which was abandoned 10 years later. Customers ultimately were on the hook for $2.3 billion for nothing. Not a single electron was ever produced. What they got was a hole in the ground. And that $2.3 billion did not even include the rate of return. Subsequent to that fiasco, Dominion Energy purchased that utility in South Carolina and is the company recovering these costs. The utilities and the banks they work with are unwilling to accept the risk involved with this speculative technology, these timelines, and this amount of money. This is why they want the bill. So why should we, the captive ratepayers, accept this risk? And just a reminder that according to the SEC's annual reports and subsequent orders, Appalachian Power's customers' average bill increased from $115 a month in 2018 to $173 a month in 2024. That's a 50% increase in APCO ratepayers' bills since 2018.
Yeah. Is it your group's position that Virginia can reach its clean economy Virginia goals with wind and solar?
Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator Peake, it is my organization's position that we would not, we don't oppose the technology of nuclear. We understand that it's about 30% of our production today. We don't close our minds to carbon-free resources. The technology is not there yet. We are concerned about the ratepayer impacts.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Peake wants to argue with the witness.
Yeah, if we've never done this before, I mean, how do you think we're going to get there? The plane, how do we get to the moon? Didn't we have to spend a little bit of money, do some research, work on it before we were able to pull that stuff off?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator Peake, with other types of technologies that hadn't been deployed before. We did pilot projects. We did it with offshore wind, a smaller ratepayer risk, and it's not possible to do with this technology.
Senator McDougall wants to.
So is your view about the ratepayer not picking up cost for private include if the solar projects or other wind projects that the ratepayer should not pick up those costs as well? Or is it just for nuclear projects?
Mr. Chair, I would say to Senator McDougall, because of the differences in technology, the risk profiles are incredibly different.
Okay, start the clock again. Let him.
I was wrapping up here. I left off at APCO's bills having increased 50% average ratepayer bill since 2018. Finally, I would just say that this bill allows utilities to charge customers for these development costs plus profit without even applying for the CPCN, which is the permit required to build the facility. There is no electricity at the end of this bill. For these reasons, we ask that you please oppose the bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'd like to express my gratitude to the patron and to the companies for meeting with us several times over the last few weeks to discuss our concerns, to attempt to address them. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to a point where our concerns were fully addressed, but I would like to spell those out. In the definition of SMR project development costs, it includes federal approvals and licensing. We're not exactly sure what that looks like for an SMR because the only project that had gotten close to that point, the NuScale project, was slated to submit their combined license application to the NRC in January of this year. The project was scrapped in November. For context, the relicensing fees for Dominion's existing nuclear plants in 2022 was $3.9 billion. That's our concern about the magnitude of these potential costs. And then if you look at the substitute in line 34, the SCC has the discretion to set a date by which the utility must either place an SMR into commercial operation or sell the permitted site unless it is at a previously existing nuclear site. A couple of problems with that. For sites that are not existing nuclear sites, there's nothing in here that guarantees that those proceeds of the sale equal the development costs that went into that project. And so there could be a large delta that the customers would be on the hook for. And then with the exception in here, if the utility were to pour project development costs into an existing nuclear site and were not able to place the SMR into commercial operation by the date set by the SCC, they wouldn't be forced to sell the site, and there's no provision for refunds to customers. So in that case, all of the project development costs would be on the customers. We don't think that it's a far-fetched scenario that an SMR does not make it into commercial operation. In fact, the recent history of SMR development in this country indicates that it is a very likely possibility. We've heard about NuScale already. There was a 2014 study that looked at 180 nuclear projects. 175 of them went over budget by an average of 117%. They also ran over the projected timeline by an average of 64%. So we would say that it's a very likely solution that this does not end up making it into operation. For those reasons, we'd ask you oppose the bill.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm Lillian Anderson with the Virginia Conservation Network. We're the partnership of over 160 different environmental organizations across the Commonwealth, and we oppose this bill. While small modular reactors may play a role in our clean energy future, Virginians' ratepayers should not bear the brunt of paying for unproven and untested technologies.
Thank you very much. Next. Well, we only have 6 seconds left. While you're talking.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. Well, we have been previously neutral on a bill coming from the House. We are a little bit concerned here about the additions on this bill that in the substitute that I just read this morning. So while we are neutral, we don't have any position on whether you should take up a fuel source or not. That's not our that's for you all to decide. But we do feel like adding in the federal approvals and licensing adds another layer of cost that we don't think is prudent necessarily, and we don't know what the scale is. And that probably does include some kind of construction costs, and that does add a layer of concern that we didn't have. We also believe that this is more necessary for a phase 1 utility, and we don't believe that the phase 2 utility, this is necessary for them. They have other options. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, we have 2 people online. We're out of time, so just identify yourself. Tell us if you represent a group, and tell us, just give us a one-sentence position.
Reese.
Reese Shearer with Southwest Virginia Nuclear Watch Coalition. If SMRs are such a great idea, let utility executives and stockholders take the risk of implementing this costly, unproven, and failing technology.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Vote to shift the cost to utility ratepayers.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Erica Gray.
Yes.
Turn on
Hello,
your
good
camera,
morning.
please.
Can you hear me?
Turn on
I'm
your
sorry,
camera, please.
I cannot get my video to work, sir. I apologize.
Okay, we know you're against
I'm
it.
sorry, but my camera is not working.
Do you
I've
represent a
been
group?
trying.
Do you represent a group?
No, I'm a citizen here in Virginia.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'd like to say that I would oppose this bill.
Okay.
Not only that it's experimental and would put Virginians on the hook for the unknown cost and risk, but I'd also like to state that Dominion has already signed us up for a subsequent license renewal to take both North Anna and Surrey up to 80 years.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And as it stands, we don't even know what those costs are yet. Last year, they awarded a contract for $200 million.
We're out of time, ma'am. I'm sorry.
For condenser and feed water heaters for North Anna. And at Surrey, I'm still not sure about those costs for the design and manufacture of 6 Italian steam generators for their license. Well, I understand, but this is a bad deal for Virginians. It puts us on the hook for the unknown costs and risk. I appreciate if you please oppose this bill. Thank you.
For,
No, you put him back.
yeah, thank you, sir. I was looking for a way to.
5-second correction from the gentleman from.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to clarify, there was an accusation that the upgrades to North Anna and Surrey cost $3.8 billion, and that's not.
Well, you know, that's we're interested in this bill. We're not all right debating North Anna and Surrey right now. I know.
Right.
There
Just trying to correct the
were
record.
statements made. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Move to report.
Okay, is there an alternative motion? If not, please open the roll. Motion to report.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Ayes 8, no 7. Okay, Senator Stewart, we were calling your name. We've been calling your name for an hour.
I'm sorry to miss that, Mr. Chairman, but I'm here now, and thank you. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 664, and I have no disillusions as to where this ends up, but I think it's an important topic to bring before this committee. What this bill does is it says if you build a data center and that requires a new power line, that has to be paid for by the data center. And let me explain that a little bit. Right now, if a data center requires a new power line, that would be, the cost would be borne by the ratepayer. And so the functional reality of that is if they've got to condemn land, the person whose land is being condemned actually has to pay a part of the condemnation for them to take their land. And that's really unfair. So in my part of the world that I represent, Senator Reeves, we have 4 sites that Amazon is developing. As a result of that, we see new power lines that have to be brought to these sites, and I'm told, based upon my investigation with Dominion and others, that we're going to have right-of-ways in excess of 100 feet to 200 feet. They're going to have to be brought fairly long distances at really significant expense. And how do I say this? Mr. Chairman, we give Amazon $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year in tax relief at the state level. We give them many billions of dollars a year of tax relief at the local level. And last quarter alone, they had they had revenues of $170 billion. Now, I'm a capitalist and I believe in it, and I want them to do as well as they can do. But with that kind of revenue and that kind of tax relief, why in the world should we make the ratepayers, that's everybody in this room, including you and I, pay for their power line? That's just not fair. And that's all this bill does. It says if you got to have a power line, you're going to pay for it instead of everybody else.
My only concern about this bill was we've got a JLARC study ongoing about the data centers and how this relates. Does this put the cart before the horse? Is this going to be a recommendation of the JLARC study?
Well, I understand what you want to do with it, and you're probably going to get your way.
No, I'm just asking. I mean,
yeah, I understand how votes go, but I will tell you, these 4 data centers in the area that Reeves and I represent are going to have a really big impact on the community. And there are a lot of people who are going to have their land condemned as a result of the right-of-ways and the power lines that have to come in. A lot of people in my district. And it's just not fair that the person whose land is being condemned has to actually pay for the take. So in reality, they're paying the utility, and it's not the utility's fault. I don't mean that. Dominion has been very cooperative and tried to work through this and very transparent about how this all works. You should not have to pay to condemn your own land, Mr.
Are there
Chairman.
questions for Senator Stewart? Are there people that feel they need to speak on this issue, one way or the other? One way or the other. People that are for it first.
I didn't ask him about to come.
People that are against it, come on up.
Good morning. I thought it'd be a lot more than you.
Just me today. Well, 1.5 of me. Good morning. My name is Kate Smiley. I'm with the Data Center Coalition. Just wanted to read one specific section from that JLARC mandate. They are looking at energy rates paid by customer classes and whether cost allocation methods ensure no single customer class is unreasonably subsidized by other customer classes. We think this bill is about a very important issue. We understand it's a hot topic. We also understand that it is exactly what JLARC is looking at. We ask that you please continue this bill to 2025 with a letter to JLARC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Miles Laurie on behalf of the Northern Virginia Technology Council. We associate ourselves with the Data Center Coalition.
Okay, thank you.
She was speaking of. Oh, you're doing height jokes now?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, she said 1.5. I assumed she was talking about Miles.
Okay, we only have an hour left, and we're going to try to get through some of these bills. Do you have a minute? Do you want to wrap up? Do you want to wrap up, or?
I know where it goes, Mr. Chairman, but I just want everybody to be aware. This is something we've got to deal with because it's just not fair to the people we represent.
Okay, is there a motion? Okay. Unless there are alternative motions, please open the roll. Motions to carry over.
Thanks, Mark.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members
Ayes
of the
11,
committee.
noes 4. Okay, Subramanian, is your bill ready to go? You think so? Okay, well, with Servel, do you have the changes you want to discuss? The changes?
Ms. Kinzer has them, and she can read them if you want. She typed it up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the second enactment clause now reads,
2, that the provisions of this act shall expire upon the issuance by the State Corporation Commission of its final order, including any appeals regarding a net energy metering proceeding conducted pursuant to Section 56-594 of the Code of Virginia for a Phase 2 utility, as those terms are defined in Subdivision A1 of 56-585.1. The Commission shall also have the authority to order relief retroactive to July 1, 2024, regarding any interconnection costs incurred by an eligible customer generator that installs any solar electric generating facility described in this act.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
does everybody on the committee understand the Surville amendment?
Mr. Chairman, but
Senator McDougal.
just because we can't see it, but it still leaves in the requirement that the SEC did. I didn't hear that struck. I just heard.
I think he struck the entire,
Oh,
Mr.
they
Chairman, I think we struck the entire enactment and replaced it with a new one.
Okay.
Move the amendment.
Second.
Move the amendment and second, amendment to the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment changes the substitute pretty substantially. Are you satisfied with it?
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
well, it's new information. If anybody out there needs to be heard on this, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm Claudia Arco with Fairfax County. I just wanted to let you all know that Fairfax County government and Fairfax County Public Schools have some major projects in the pipeline that would be affected by the original bill. It would help us, and so we're supportive of continuing to move this forward as we go
The
through
original bill would have helped.
The original bill would help. Obviously, you all have made a lot of changes today, but we'd like to keep this moving and continue talking about it, so we support the concept. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, honorable senators, and thank you for your attention on this and your willingness to work with us on this.
You've spoken a couple times before. We're interested primarily in a reaction to the substitute.
Right. We support this proposed amendment. I just want to clear a few misunderstandings, if I may. This is not about big solar. It's about school projects. It's not about forcing the SEC to do something.
We're just talking about the amendment. We're not talking about the rest of the stuff.
Fine. We support this amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there others? And we're taking opposition.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Catherine Bond from Dominion Energy, speaking to the substitute we saw for the first time just before committee began, so I'm not exactly clear on the amendment. But based on the substitute, Dominion's opposed to the bill. As we read it, the key points on this is that it affects projects that are behind one customer's meter. So for decades, that customer gets the sole financial benefits of that project. But the question is, who pays to safely protect the grid, the people who are working on it, from the project? So the idea is we have to prevent backfeeding and be able to communicate with the project at all times in case there's a downline, somebody's working on the grid, and ensure there's no equipment damage or reliability impact if voltage varies. It was previously stated that this affects about 120 projects out of the 40,800 or so projects we've interconnected to date. However, I note that in this substitute, it says that any projects before July 1st, 2025 that make a request would also be subject to this $175 provision. So it could create a land rush in an unknown number of projects. I'll also note that the $175 is not an absolute amount. So, Mr. Chair, to Senator McPike's question earlier, it does not create a pool that is shared. It is a cap, so it's an up to $175. So undetermined cost shift to non-participating customers to safely protect the grid from these.
Okay. Were you able to digest the amendment at all?
Our concerns are not addressed, to the best of my understanding, in the amendment as we heard it read.
Okay.
I can't speak to the amendment. It might create additional concerns, but it doesn't resolve the concerns we have on the bill.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
I think we want to just respond to a couple.
Okay, well, you've got the opportunity to close up. Final.
I'm going to yield my time to the experts.
Okay.
So as far as behind the meter upgrades go, these are behind the meter projects, but the upgrades that are being requested are sometimes miles away from the project, and they don't benefit the project in any way. They don't make it more beneficial for that particular customer. They make it more beneficial for the grid. As far as safety and reliability concerns that were expressed, the safety and reliability reports that have come out from Dominion shareholder reports say that they have gotten safer and more reliable as more solar has come online.
Senator Obenchain has a question.
Sure.
So my understanding is that that some projects are being assessed with, say, $275,000 cost for a project, and that maybe your project cannot afford that and go forward, right?
Almost none of them. So if I could just
hang on.
Sorry.
Let me follow up, Mr. Chairman. So this substitute says that you will pay the $175, but that later, after the case, the State Corporation Commission can order you to pay the $275,000 if appropriate, right?
That's not how I read that amendment.
Well, if that's Mr. Chair, if that is the case, would you be able to pay that?
That is a long, complicated conversation.
Thank you.
But if I could quantify, in this business we talk in watts, and deals live and die on pennies. I've seen 2 or 3 cents make a difference, and what we're agreeing to here is an across-the-board increase of 17.5 cents on every single one of our projects.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's interesting as we're having these conversations. This is all about what the ratepayers are. The bill before this was about what the ratepayers would pay for if you had an SMR. This is about what the ratepayers will pay for a single entity who is the sole beneficiary versus that cost for them to connect and to make sure that nothing flows negatively to the grid that all the rest of us use. Who pays that cost? Mr. Chairman, I don't think that the ratepayers should pay the cost to protect them from a single provider coming on, but I'd move that we carry this bill over.
Second. Are there alternative motions? Okay, that substitute motion goes first, so the motions to report. All open the roll, please.
Ayes 4, noes 11.
Motion to report fails. Can we just reverse the roll to carry over, or
I'd rather us vote.
we have to go through it again? Okay. The primary motion is carry over. Okay. Thank you.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're back to the members of the committee, and Senator Servell said he had a couple of uncontested bills.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Senate Bill 253 is the first one, Mr. Chairman. That's the APCO shared solar bill.
Okay. It's shared solar and APCO's and found.
Was this? I'm sorry. Is APCO? Do I get them backwards? I think I might have got them backwards. Okay. Okay. The first one's Dominion. Then. Okay. I'm sorry.
253.
It's still uncontested. So, Mr. Chairman, this has to do with the existing shared solar program that we authorized in 2020. There's been a lot of consternation about. I'm sorry, I do have a substitute. We moved the substitute.
Second. Move the substitute. We're just seeing it for the first time, right?
I think that's probably right.
223. Is it dated February?
253.
23. 659. The last one in my book. Okay, 29, okay. Just explain the bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, what it does is it basically revises the existing, and a lot of work has gone in. I can't tell you how many meetings we've had to straighten this out, but the bill basically, there was a lot of consternation about the minimum bill that the SEC ordered, that the minimum bill made these shared solar programs completely infeasible. So what I did was I rewrote the minimum bill language to basically say that the SEC has to revisit the minimum bill after they complete their value of solar proceeding, which is scheduled to take place in about a year. And once that's done, the SEC will determine what the value of solar is. And this bill requires them to deduct the benefits of solar against the cost to the ratepayers. It gives the SEC still complete 100% discretion in order to set the minimum bill. It just requires them to show their math. That's the biggest thing the bill does. The other thing it does is it doesn't allow the solar developers to keep the RECs and sell them. They're required to retire them so that the value of solar can be attributed to the projects. That's the biggest two things it does, and then it authorizes another 200 megawatts of projects, which is about, I think it's about 20 projects. The existing program was supposed to be a program for both full paying customers and low income customers. It ended up turning into an entirely 100% low income program because of the way the SEC interpreted it. That's not what we intended, and this sort of restores it to what our intent was and gives the parties another shot to try to get a working program. That's effectively what it does, and I don't think there's any opposition to it at this
Okay,
point.
are there questions for Senator Serval? Is there truly peace in the valley on this bill? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougall.
Mr. Chairman, if I hear correct, that some people might be in favor or not in favor of this, but if my understanding, this still shifts cost from people doing development to the ratepayers. It might be the lesser than what it was, but it still does that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
I would say that kind of depends on your point of view. I mean, one of the point of the
Whether you're a ratepayer?
No, but let me put it this way: the point of the value of solar study is that when these projects, like the one you just heard from Senator Subramanian, are done, they actually provide some upgrades to the grid that have benefit to ratepayers because they make the grid more resilient and strong. In addition, solar versus other types of energy, if we do these projects, it reduces the need for Dominion to purchase RECs in order to comply with the VCEA. And also, solar energy produces fewer externalities like cancer, pollution, climate change, et cetera. And all of those benefits need to be calculated into reducing the minimum bill. And so by calculating those benefits, it shouldn't, if the SEC does their job, it shouldn't shift costs. I believe there's also language in this requiring the SEC to minimize the cost shift. It's, I think, specifically in the bill. So if we trust the SEC to get it right, it shouldn't shift any costs.
Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, is the SEC in the business of quantifying the intangible benefits like, climate change and things like that?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that's within their discretion, and I believe that's partly what the value of solar proceeding rate case that we required them to conduct, which is going to take place this year for APCO, next year for Dominion, is about.
Mr. Chairman, I would support this if it addressed quantifiable benefits, but I think it's still shifting to what the rate base benefits that are just impossible to quantify.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that I think that's a fundamental policy difference between our caucuses, that some of us believe that there are benefits to renewable energy that don't show up on a balance sheet, but that in order to the entire public that are actually capable of being figured out.
Are there people that need to speak on this issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chris McDonald, Williams Mullen, on behalf of the Coalition for Community Solar Access, the leading trade association of community solar, or in Virginia called shared solar developers. We thank the patron. As he mentioned, this has been a long and winding process, a lot of discussions, a lot of meetings over the last several months, and we're pleased to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Claudia Arco with Fairfax County again, and we support the legislation for the reasons
Thank you very
stated.
much. Yes. Come on up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We support the bill. I'll note that there's also a provision in here that provides incentives for projects that are located on rooftops, brownfields, or landfills, trying to reduce impacts to farms and forests. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Trias Lockwood representing Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association. We have over 100 solar industry members regionally, and we support the bill, and we want to thank the patron for his work on this over the years.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We support this bill because we think there should be equitable access to solar, equitable access to all sort of forms of having reliable energy, and we also believe that this will help minimize impacts on ratepayers. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Thomas Turner with Conservatives for Clean Energy. We support the bill because it expands clean energy to more people in the Commonwealth.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network. We support this bill, and smaller solar projects are supported by our conservation community at large, as they'll reduce the amount of large-scale solar needed and help protect our farms and forests. We ask that you support this bill as well.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund, we support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Bond, you want to speak?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Catherine Bond, Dominion Energy. With gratitude to the patron, we do support the bill. And to address a question that was previously asked, I believe it's around lines 105 to 107. It retains the language that's in existing code that requires the commission to ensure that customers participating pay their fair share and minimize the cost shift to non-participating customers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, the bill's before the committee. Are there motions? A motion and a second. Are there alternative motions? Open the roll, please.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Ayes 10, noes 5. Okay, 253 also.
255, Mr. Chairman.
255.
I have a substitute. I'd move the substitute.
Substitute. Okay, just explain the differences between the approach with Dominion and Appalachian then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, APCO is smaller, and so this program's smaller. It's only 50 megawatts instead of 400. The other difference is that it does not require the utility to do a bill credit. So in other words, the solar company has to directly bill the customer. APCO has a very different billing system, and they couldn't absorb that cost, or it's extremely expensive. And this also doesn't have a low-income program like the Dominion program does.
This is the first shared solar in Appalachian territory, right?
Correct, Your Honor. Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. And I think I've been out of that mode for about 30 days.
Okay.
But yeah, we've been working on this for 4 years trying to get it done. We finally were able to get something that, not everybody's happy with this, by the way, but nobody's opposed to it. But it's a good compromise. It's like a good settlement, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. If somebody has something new to say, then come on up. If somebody has something they feel compelled to say on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. John Morris, Appalachian Power. Just to reiterate the patron's indication that everyone is fine with the bill. We support the bill. We appreciate very much the patron and the stakeholders' willingness to work on a project we think is workable for our service territory. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Second. Mr. Chairman, can I ask?
There's a motion and a second, but Senator McDougal's got.
Mr. Chairman, the problem with getting these substitutes right now, it's hard for us to pick up all these things, but I looked at the previous bill that we just voted on, and I just picked up in line 120, it said that those shared solar programs shall serve no more than 51% low-income customers. So I guess we could have served 100% today, and now it's 51. Does this one have any such language on restrictions on the number of low-income customers that can be served?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, just note that I emailed subs that were very close to these to everybody about a week ago for the last hearing. But on this one, no, there is no low-income program. And with regard to the last one you heard, that referred to the existing low-income program and a very small expansion of the new program. But that most of the 51% was the existing program.
Okay, we have a motion to report that's been seconded. Unless there are alternative motions, please open the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay, ayes 10, noes 5, the usual suspects. Okay, there are six bills still on the agenda. Who's got a bill that's easy? I do. Senator Rouse. 634. Turn your attention to Senator Rouse. Seven bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. SB 634 just expands the factors that the Virginia State Corporation, the SEC, can consider in making decisions. The new factors that the SEC can consider under SB 634 include safety, Virginia's economy, workforce development, and the maintenance of fair labor standards. Traditionally, the SEC's primary focus when regulating public utilities was to keep the cost to ratepayers low. As Virginians make the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, it has become clear that the SEC needs to also consider workforce development, local hire, and wage levels to make sure that the future economy includes highly skilled, safe, and family-supporting jobs that benefit residents of local communities. And for this reason, Virginia already has authorized the SEC to partially consider workforce development and local hire when improving some renewable energy projects and legislation such as Virginia's Clean Energy Policy and the Virginia Economy Act.
Let me ask you, Senator Rouse, are there other places where we've asked the State Corporation Commission to look at workforce development and maintenance of fair labor standards, or are those responsibilities of other organizations?
Yes, those responsibilities of other organizations, I believe, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman.
So then they're not really, that would be somewhat new for the State Corporation Commission.
Yes, this is just, there's no law that authorizes the SEC to consider the maintenance of fair wages. This just corrects that and also makes clear that the SEC should just consider workforce development and safety in all of its decisions relating to the regulations of utilities. Absolutely. And I believe I have an expert here to speak.
Okay, are there questions for Senator Rouse? Okay, we have people that want to speak on this bill.
If there's anyone online that would like to speak in favor, please raise your hand.
We'll do 3 minutes on each side if we have to, yes. There are multiple speakers.
You got the mic, sir. Mr. Chairman, good morning. This bill is modeled after a similar bill in Maryland where the Maryland...
Could you identify yourself and tell us your organization?
My name is Randy Dillard. I represent Laborers International Union North America, LAUNA. And this bill is modeled after a bill that is it was voted on and approved in Maryland in 2021. And the Virginia Clean Energy Act and the Virginia Clean Economy Act has some language related to the information that we have in this current bill. So we ask that your committee approve the bill, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there people that are in support online?
Mr. Chair, there's no one to speak in favor at this time.
Okay, start over again. Are there people that are opposed to this bill?
If there's anyone online that would like to speak in opposition, please raise your hand.
Okay. The commission's not neutral.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Kim Pate with the State Corporation Commission. Just wanted to point out that this is in the general section concerning the State Corporation Commission, so it's not just applying to utilities. It would apply to Bureau of Insurance, financial institutions, all of the different components of the commission.
Okay, so was the intent of Senator Rouse to include this in the utility section, or to include everything?
Including the utility section. That's the intent. And it just offers that the commission can consider it in making a decision. It doesn't mandate or shall or any of those words we typically give us pause.
She'll also consider, so there's a mandate that they consider it. But the commission's neutral on this otherwise.
We're neutral on this. There are different Just from the utility side, again, I just only talk about utilities. There are different applications before the commission where this might be maybe not as applicable, such as an affiliate transaction case or a transfer of assets, where it may be more applicable in a rate case.
Okay, thank you. Are there others who need to speak on this? Are there members of the committee that have questions or motions or?
Motion to report.
Got a motion to report. Is there a second? Are there alternative motions? If there aren't, please open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Ayes 8-7. Okay. Your easy bill got through 8-7. Okay. Okay. Are there other easy bills?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servell.
256 was already heard by us, and I also have my UVA students are back again in case they're needed, but we took testimony on that before.
Which one?
256.
256.
Yeah, Mr. Stevens has a couple line amendments or typo.
256 is a bad faith bill.
No.
That was Senator Servell worked on with UVA students that we've had public testimony on. We did have public testimony.
Right. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute to the bill that I distributed a week ago to the committee by email.
Did we not receive negative testimony on this?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But Mr. Chairman, we need to get it in proper posture and adopt the substitute that I distributed a week ago.
Okay.
Move the substitute.
Second. All in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. Okay, the substitute's for the committee. And we went over this last week, I guess, and so I think we understand the bill. We'll take 2 minutes of testimony for, 2 minutes against.
Okay. Mr. Chair for the patron before testimony.
Before testimony starts, Senator Peake's got a question for Senator Servell.
When they did. Mr. Chair, Senator Servell, so most of these cases obviously are personal injury cases, so the attorney most likely is going to have it on a contingency fee, so that they get the verdict, they get a 40% contingency fee on the verdict. You then, under your bill, double the verdict, so that, Mr. Chair, Senator Servell, do they get a 40% contingency fee on the doubled verdict?
Mr. Chairman, if that's what their fee agreement is, that's what would happen.
All right, then, Mr. Chairman, you also have a provision for attorney's fees. How is that determined after they've already gotten the 40% contingency on the doubled verdict?
Mr. Chairman, what I tell the patron is that it's just like they do attorney's fees in like fee shifting cases, like under the Consumer Protection Act, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or there's all kinds of other federal consumer protection statutes where lawyers often take them on a contingency. The court has the authority to order fees based on the time and hours expended in the case.
So, Mr. Chairman, then that was my understanding. So the attorney who takes one of these cases, Mr. Chairman, will get 40% on the original verdict, 40% on the doubled verdict, and then he submits his time and hours, and he will get an award from the court, and that all goes straight to the attorney. Is that correct?
I guess you're talking about your practice, right? You're talking about the way you do things. Senator Obenshain.
Well, am I correct? Does the award attorney's fee go straight to the attorney and not to the client?
I think Senator Obenshain's going to answer your question.
Mr. Chairman, when court orders attorney's fees, that award of attorney's fees goes to the client. It reimburses the client for the attorney fees that have been paid. And these cases, hopefully the insurance companies wind up acting in good faith, and you never wind up in this situation. Nobody wants to be in that situation. Nobody's setting insurance companies up. This is a situation in which an insurance company has as found by a court, acted in bad faith. So, nobody's banking when they go into a personal injury action on an insurance company acting in bad faith.
Does that answer your question, Senator Peake?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. People that are for the legislation. 2 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mark Dix on behalf of the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association. We'd like to thank Senator Surville for bringing this measure forward, and we'd like to thank the UVA Law School Policy Clinic for all of their backroom research and assistance with this. The source of the problem that SB 256 seeks to fix is a 2017 decision called Manu versus Geico. Now, prior to that decision, we had all assumed that auto insurers have a duty to operate in good faith with their own insureds. But ever since that decision, which said that no, that duty doesn't arise until after judgment, ever since that decision, some auto insurers have seized upon that ruling to make lowball offers or no offers. And again, this is to their own insureds. They're making no offers or lowball offers absent a judgment. This has occurred in even the most egregious of cases, clear liability, catastrophic injuries. And this isn't fair. This bill gives the insureds another tool in the toolbox and incentivizes the auto insurers to treat their own insureds at least as fairly as they treat third parties, and we hope it will be the will of the committee to report the bill. Thank you.
Are there other people that want to speak in favor? Are there people that have another view? Please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Clark Lewis at Troutman Pepper, speaking on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We respectfully oppose the bill. I think what you need to look at this bill, this is akin to a penalty or a punitive damage provision. Typically in Virginia law right now, when you get in an auto accident, the person that strikes you is the third party, and there's third party insurance. That's the person that hits you. Under Virginia common law, there is an action for bad faith. And if you look at that case law, you'll see that it's for wanton, reckless, intentional disregard, arbitrary, high standards of what is just simply not acceptable so that a court feels that a penalty is warranted. And that penalty under common law is the full judgment amount. This statute here that originated is based on what we call third-party insurance, which is your insurance, which is underinsurance, meaning the person that hit you had a smaller policy, you have a higher policy, and it helps protect you. Well, we're not borrowing anything of what has been established in common law. It is a lack of good faith. And I guarantee you everybody in this room will disagree on what lack of good faith is, particularly in an adversarial relationship, which is called litigation in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's very, very difficult. There's no road guards. There's no definitions. But if you're found to act in the lack of good faith, guess what happens? You get a fast pass to damages because it says lack of good faith shall, not may, not in the discretion of the court, not in the discretion of the jury. It's fast pass to damages. So low threshold, high judgment. And what is it? 2 times the judgment amount. I can't find anywhere in Virginia law where we're awarding 2 times the judgment amount. If you look at the other provisions in this code, it's 2 times the policy amount, but not the judgment amount. We respectfully oppose. It will increase in our ratepayers.
Look at timber trespass. It's got treble damages. You now come on up and identify yourself. If you got a group, you're representing. But
Joe Hudgens with the Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia, and some unintended consequences possibly. This is definitely going to put upward pressure on rates and availability of insurance.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's going to be an issue.
Just identify yourself and tell us if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick O'Grady, Virginia Association of Defense Attorneys. We take no position on the merits of the bill. We submitted our comments in writing about 2 language changes. We'd ask the court, the committee to consider. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, the bill is before the committee. Senator Surville, you want to wrap up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I appreciate working with the insurance industry, trying to. We made a few edits to try to make it a little better for them. Some of their companies are okay with it, and some aren't. I guess the majority aren't. But I would just point out that not all insurance companies are bad. There's a few of them that are causing this problem, a few really big ones. What this does is it restores the law to what it was before 2017. And if all these horrible things were such a problem, I'm not clear why the insurance industry didn't fall apart before 2017 when the Supreme Court based on like 2 words in the statute, completely turn the law upside down in Virginia. What this bill seems to do is give Virginians the value of the insurance that they pay to protect them and their families, and I think we need to get this through.
Senator Rouse has a question.
I don't have a question, more of a comment, and I'll be very, very brief in my comments. Just want to thank Senator Servell for bringing this bill forward. I have personal experience dealing with bad faith insurance. A company, I won't state their name, but this has affected my family personally for years, for a number of years, and they acted in bad faith because they knew they could. And to hear insurance companies say that this is going to raise, they're just going to raise the fees and rates on their payers, that to me is also saying basically, you know you're acting in bad faith. If you're going to raise the fees on the rates because this may double a penalty if you acted in bad faith, well, you just submitted in testimony today that you're going to raise the fees because you know what you're doing is wrong. And so I want to thank Senator Servell for bringing this bill forward.
Okay, is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
There's a motion to report and a second. Are there other motions? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 11, noes 3, abstentions 1.
Okay, ayes 11, noes 3, abstention 1. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McPike.
I got an easy one.
Okay, McPike has 591.
And I got SJ 47, which I don't think has opposition either.
I know, but you've already had 3.
Hey, you put them you put all my bills at the same
so
time.
other
I didn't
people are
do
going to go first. Okay, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, and happy Friday. This is the bill on reducing the threshold from 5 megawatt to 1 megawatt. It's built a fairly wide coalition of support. However, Mr. Chairman, I think there's still some issues, and I'd move that we carry it over and send it for a cure to take a look at some of the details associated with it.
Okay, the motion, is there a second? A motion to carry over, unless there are alternative motions, open the roll. Okay.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. Before we get back to the Servell docket, I wanted to put my 2 bills out there. 567 was a bill that I introduced because I was concerned, I am concerned that we're not going to meet our goals unless we figure out how to do a better job of siting industrial solar. But the reality is the bill is probably not ready for prime time and probably needs to go to sewer as well. So I'd entertain a motion to carry over.
So moved.
Okay, unless there are alternative motions, please open the roll. Okay, then 565.
Ayes 15, no 0.
565 is a bill that was designed, or is designed, I think there's a substitute, and there have been people working on this bill up until the last few hours. There's a substitute 565. Okay, got a motion and a second to adopt the substitute, please. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Opposed, no. The substitute looks a lot different from the original. There have been a lot of people, a lot of chefs in this kitchen. The whole idea is to encourage future energy saving targets set by the SEC, make sure they're feasible and cost effective. The substitute provides a longer runway to allow the SEC to develop a new cost effectiveness test that follows the guiding principles of a nationally recognized resource called the National Standard Practice Manual. These principles ensure the cost-effective test aligns with the state energy policy. It's the cheapest energy is the energy we don't use. You know, the electricity. When we can figure out a way to stay cool without the air conditioner, we can figure out a way to stay lit without turning the light switch on. And this bill is basically about it, creating energy efficiency. Huh. Okay. So, Senator Lucas, if you want to chair.
Senator Deeds.
I think there are people here that are for and against this bill, even in substitute form, and I'd ask you to hear from those folks.
Good morning. We're going to give 3 minutes to each side. As soon as I can find the 3-minute button. There it is. All right, go right ahead.
Good morning. My name is Chelsea Harnish. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, representing nearly 100 members across the country. And we support...
Can you speak a little bit closer to the mic?
And we support SB 565. Energy efficiency is an untapped resource in Virginia. The substitute has two key provisions, ensuring future utility energy savings goals are both feasible and cost-effective. It ensures feasibility by requiring the SCC to develop a potential study to determine what remaining savings are available in the market. The bill also develops a brand new cost-effective test using best practices that allow for stakeholder input, ensures test inputs are both transparent and symmetrical across costs and benefits, and aligns with state energy policy. The substitute also provides the utilities with a 1.5-year glide path so they can become familiar with the test and its parameters well before
You have
it becomes
three other speakers
effective.
on your side, and you're down to 1 minute and 56 seconds.
Yep, I'm done, and I had a handout on the timeline that I mentioned. That's all.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Lillian Anderson, speaking on behalf of the Nature Conservancy, and we support this bill. Virginia's energy demand is growing, and energy efficiency can help balance the impact of that growth. Helping customers reduce demand means reducing all of the impacts of new energy generation on our air, water, land, and climate. Virginia's existing energy efficiency program gives utilities the same return on equity from energy efficiency as they get on building new generation. The SAVE Act strengthens our existing policy and is a win for ratepayers, for utilities, and for our nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the
Are
committee.
we still for? Yes, please speak on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Thomas Turner with Conservatives for Clean Energy. We support this legislation because of energy efficiency, because energy efficiency helps lower grid congestion during high periods of demand while saving consumers money on their electric bills. It also will update the
We're down to 40 seconds. I just want people to come to the mic and give their names and tell me whether you're in support or not.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, we support the bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, John Morris, Appalachian Power, and we support the substitute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Trias Lockwood, representing the Impact Project, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Matt Mansell on behalf of Ceres. Ceres supports the bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Mike Town, Virginia LCV, we support the bill.
Thank you for your brevity. Are there others who would like to speak to the bill? Come forward, give your name.
Madam Chair, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and only in this line because there's a new clock. And we would appreciate the opportunity to continue to work on the bill. We do have concerns with getting rid of the energy efficiency tests that so far, since the passage of the Clean Economy Act, have led to 0 proposed projects being turned down in favor of a test that's yet to be determined. And that test is the State Corporation Commission, as it establishes, it has to refer to this manual. I've brought 3 copies with me in case anybody wants to review it. But our concerns are contained in the manual, for example, that it attempts to quantify and assign a value to things like the satisfaction of being able to control one's own energy use, reduce medical costs, ER visits, pride, psychological benefits, and even shifting costs to other customers are assigned a value. So I'll be happy to leave copies if anybody's interested in reading it.
Thank you.
There you go. There's a copy for you, sir.
Madam Chair, Brett Vassey, Virginia Manufacturers Association. We support efficiency, but this bill not in particular. We haven't seen any demonstration the SCC is incapable of doing their job in assessing cost effectiveness of EE programs. We encourage you to keep the 4 tests. We made an agreement a few years ago that they can't use 1 test to drown out any EE program. They have to do 2 or more. That's worked famously. Perhaps you can add this as just one more consideration, but the intention here, be clear, is a 309-page unclear manual that you could drive a bus through. That's really our concern. Thank you.
Mr. Vassey, do you get pride in speaking against the bill?
Madam Chair.
Senator Dees, your mic's not working for me. Let me use mine. I want to turn your attention to the committee. Any questions of the patriot?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Senator McPike?
we had someone pass out some information, and could please, Chelsea, come up real quick and just follow up to the manual question and sort of explain how the manual is applied and how it's used, Madam Chair?
Yes.
That's how you get your extra time.
Yes. So the manual is 309 pages, but it is a guiding principles document or a resource manual. And so I have also printed out a page. I have a couple of copies I can hand out if you're interested, but one page from the document is the process that the jurisdiction, in this case would be the state, would develop. And so it is a 4-part process, and it uses language like decide which benefits and costs could be included, decide if there will be a secondary test. So in no way is this a mandate or a requirement. It is just saying these are things that need to be considered when you are looking at developing your own test.
Mr. Chairman.
Further questions?
Madam Chairman.
Senator McDougal?
We have not been able to look through this manual because we just saw it and just saw the substitute. But I think we heard that there were some things like satisfaction from putting these programs into place, or pride, or ER visits. How do we quantify pride or satisfaction?
Yeah, so again, it's not requirements. Those are not, it's not saying that those are things that Virginia will ultimately decide to put in. It's just listing out every single cost and benefit that could be applicable. And then the stakeholder process would include all of the utilities and experts can decide what is best for Virginia. I also want to mention that Mr. Vassy had mentioned that he believes that the SCC is capable, and we agree. Currently, statute says that if an energy efficiency program passes 3 of 4 tests, then it is in the benefit, it's in the public interest. So it actually is current statute ties the SCC's hands. So by moving to one single test that would be adopted and finally approved by the SCC, we are actually giving them back that freedom so that they can determine if programs are cost effective and feasible for the ratepayers.
Madam Chair. Sorry.
Senator McPike.
I did have one additional follow-up. So the manual seems to be a mystery. Has this been discussed with Dominion Commission staff before as a sort of a known entity? And can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. So the Grid Transformation and Security Act of 2018 established energy efficiency stakeholder groups for both utilities. So APCO and Dominion have been operating these stakeholder groups for many years at this point. As early as 2021, through the Dominion stakeholder process, there were conversations and presentations, and on on the manual and also on the inputs that Dominion specifically uses. And then back in October of 2023, there was a presentation given by one of the authors of the manual to that stakeholder process.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions by any other member of the committee? Comments? Senator Dees, you want to wrap it up?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, didn't see you. Anybody on the queue?
Madam Chair.
Push your button.
Oops, sorry, Madam Chair.
Senator,
I apologize profusely.
Senator Dees.
I was starting to go through the manual and reading some of the details in this, and I was just curious, did the SCC ask for this bill? I know the SCC is here. No? Okay.
Madam Chair, the SCC didn't ask for this bill.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Dees.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Reeves. Senator McDougal.
Madam Chairman, just who is the group that produced this manual?
Senator Dees.
It's a national, Madam Chair, it's my understanding it's a national manual. I'm not sure what group produced it.
I think it says E.
Yeah,
E
so
for the future.
the National Energy.
I can't hear the speaker.
The National Energy Screening Project is a multi-collaborative stakeholder initiative that worked together to put the manual together. So it's made up of experts nationwide who work in the EM&V space for utilities, including a variety of utility vendors. The list of the stakeholders also includes several gas and electric utilities. And then the E for the Future is what houses the National Energy Screening Project, but the manual itself is a collaborative stakeholder engagement process, again, with stakeholders nationwide.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Question of the
Senator
witness.
Stanley.
And I notice in this manual here at the bottom, it's a National Energy Screening Project, NESP, a project of E for the Future,
Right.
which funds this NESP entirely, it seems, from what I'm reading here on the internet. Is that true?
No, it houses the manual, and so all of the stakeholders that are involved are individual entities from different businesses. So we have a variety, and it also includes some gas and electric utilities. If you look in the manual, it lists out all of the stakeholders, and you will see that there are some stakeholders that are utilities as well.
Madam Chair.
Senator Stanley.
I'm reading E for the Future's website, which says it is the primary funder for the National Energy Screening Project, and it also states that it is solely, its purpose is to create solutions to advance climate protection and economic fairness by influencing federal, state, and local policies to create vibrant energy efficiency and clean energy sectors. Is that fair that the manual that we're supposed to now adopt and use is by a stakeholder with one bent, with one ideal, with one opinion on what state, local, and federal policy should be with regard to energy?
Madam Chair, Senator Stanley, I would say that they are the ones that pay for the administrative costs to ensure that the manual is printed and that it's upheld. But the stakeholders are the ones, it's a stakeholder-driven process, and the stakeholders are the ones that update the manual and provide the detail. And again, it provides, it's a wide variety of stakeholders, including vendors that Dominion itself has used in the past, like ICF. It has Energy Futures Group. There's been a wide variety of stakeholders, again, and some gas and electric utilities who are engaged in developing this manual. It's been updated twice.
Madam Chairman. Just note, what this bill seeks to do is reduce regulatory hurdles and burdens for the energy generation companies. And I would just note that the bill on the other side is carried by a Republican who's bringing that bill over. I think that if there were issues with this group or what it was, he would have figured that out too, because it's his bill. But I guess we can ask him when he gets here. But I think we're arguing about something that's really not an issue, Madam Chair.
Senator D. Staff.
With it. And Madam Chair, I actually grabbed a copy of the manual and started skimming through and reading parts of it. And when I look at some of the groups on this, it's Berkeley National Lab, Recurver, Exelon. I would like to see something a little more fairly balanced between West Coast, East Coast, if we're going to rely on something like this, and maybe get something a little bit more fairly balanced. But again, it's not my report. I didn't pay for it. I just grabbed a copy and started reading it, and that was probably my mistake.
You'll be tested tomorrow. Senator Deeds, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this should not be a partisan issue. Energy efficiency is the way we save the planet in the long haul. It's the way we reduce carbon in the atmosphere and save money for people across the board. As somebody indicated, Senator Survell, this bill is carried by somebody in the other party on the other side, and it's advancing there. I'd move that we report the bill.
You heard the motion to report the bill with the substitute. All in favor, please let your preference be known electronically.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Ayes 9, no 6. The bill will be reported with the substitute. Okay. Senator Deeds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have two bills left. Senator Survell, Senate Joint Resolution 47, I don't think has any opposition. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
It's a study of
performance-based regulation.
Performance-based regulations. Is it true that there is no opposition to this resolution? Okay, there's a motion to report. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, I do have a substitute to
I have a
conform to the
substitute.
House. I'm sorry.
Motion move substitute.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, is there anything different from the substitute from the to the original? I guess there's something different.
I deleted some language about, there's two big differences. One is I deleted the direction to the SCC to study consolidating what the definition of what's in the public interest for utility policies. They're not studying that anymore. The second thing is that it was also requested that we also study not just performance-based regulation as it applies to the utilities, but also as to, I think, third-party competitive providers. I think the incumbents thought what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and they wanted it to be more encompassing. Those are the two changes.
Okay, does everyone understand the changes? Okay, there was a motion earlier to report.
Report with substitute.
To renew the substitute, report the substitute, and that motion's been seconded. Unless there are alternative motions, please open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 2, abstentions 1.
Okay, that bill is reported. Okay, we've got a little bit less than 4 minutes to take care of our last bill, and that's 737 from Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have either amendments or a sub. I'm not sure how Tom drafted it. Substitute. Move the substitute.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, what this bill does is pretty simple. It broadens the ability of utilities as part of their energy efficiency program to include converting folks from fuel oil and propane to heat pumps. Right now, they can't do that because of the way energy is defined in the energy efficiency statute. The only difference from the substitute from the original bill is it took out natural gas and made a couple of technical changes that the energy efficiency advocates requested. I believe the only opposition is from the Poverty Law Center and somebody else.
I was getting an email from the Poverty Law Center last night that they've got a problem with the bill.
Yeah, I think they're the only ones,
You're picking
I
on
think.
poor people.
Mr. Chair.
Once again, Servell. Okay, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the patron, you took out natural gas. Why would you take out natural gas and not propane? People in rural Virginia don't have access to natural gas. Their only access to gas heated homes is propane. What's the rationale?
Mr. Chairman, the rationale is that I think had to do more with carbon emissions and also price. I think propane is more expensive than natural gas, and converting from propane into heat pumps is still a significant cost savings for consumers. That was the big one. And the natural gas customers tend to be, I don't know how you put it. There's a lot more of those, and they could consume the whole program.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the patron, isn't in fact, one of the great things I love about the patron here is that his family comes from the greatest county in all the Commonwealth of Virginia and Franklin. But I also understand that he has a wonderful historic farm there, and that is heated by propane, is it not?
Fuel oil.
What's the diff?
Big difference.
Which is not on this list either, is it?
No, fuel oil is included, so you could convert fuel oil. Or the utility could help to convert fuel oil, but not natural gas. Heat pumps are incredibly way more cheap and inexpensive. Fuel oil can save fuel oil customers like $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year, depending on the price of fuel oil. It's a substantial savings. It's much better for the planet. And this is an energy efficiency bill following on to Senator Deed's bill that we just passed a moment ago, really.
Okay. Okay, we need to move the sub.
Okay, move the sub.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the sub, adopting the sub, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Morrison, you've got something.
Thank you. Just a personal experience here. I converted from fuel oil from a 1948 house to a very highly efficient heat pump system. It is remarkable, the energy costs that I have saved. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator Morrison, for sharing that. We're out of time. We're out of time, but Are there people that want to speak in favor of this bill?
I'm sorry, the propane people are opposed to. I forgot.
Well, I want to hear if anybody's in favor of the bill first.
Yeah, Walter Chair with the NRDC. We support.
Okay, 3 minutes
Support.
total.
What's that? 3 minutes total. All this does is create an option to restore a level playing field so that the very best energy efficiency technology can win. It doesn't force anyone to do anything. It's not taking propane out of anyone's home. It's just if it makes financial sense for that customer, they can now do it. And another benefit is under Virginia law, those with the very highest energy bills and the lowest incomes will see the benefits of this bill and this reform very first. It's a highly targeted bill to maximize cost of living reductions for Virginians when they choose to do so.
Okay, are there others that want to speak in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Morris, Appalachian Power, we are also in support.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jacob Newton on behalf of Virginia's Electric Cooperatives, and we also support the bill and appreciate the patron carving in the cooperatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Carving out the cooperatives?
Carving in, actually. We have a separate section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that's compelled to speak in favor of this? Are there those who want to share another point of view?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mike O'Connor, representing Virginia Propane Gas Association. There is no free lunch. One of the things this does not address is the cost of conversion. To convert a house that's with fuel oil or propane, probably we're talking about $5,000 on average. Usually those are lower income people. How is that going to be addressed? Number two, the substitute that you have before you includes a carve-out for the gas industry, regulated companies. It does not carve out propane, which are Virginia-based small businesses. So we asked for that, was rejected. We would ask you to reject the bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Carmen Bingham with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. And as previously stated, we do have one concern about the bill, and that is that there is minimal protection for low-income consumers who do participate in these programs through the utilities-sponsored programs sponsored by Dominion and APCO. The only thing that we are asking for is just a consideration that in reducing the energy usage, that low-income customers programs, when they convert to a heat pump, that they also consider the cost shift. Because what really will happen is that you will have an installer come in, they will replace the existing system with a more energy efficient heat pump, which will reduce the energy usage, but it will not necessarily reduce the cost because there is no protection in there to make sure that that home is energy levelized through energy efficiency measures first. Now, we're not asking that they do those first. We're just asking if you're going to look at the overall energy reduction, you also need to look at the cost comparison of that. So if somebody comes in, their home is not energy efficient, the installer installs a heat pump, they're going to use more energy to run that heat pump to heat that inefficient home. So we had a simple line amendment that all we wanted to do was just ask that for the low-income programs, that there is a requirement that they also look at making sure that the energy costs with the conversion is considered for these programs. A market rate customer has the financial viability.
Have you shared that amendment with Senator Serval?
I did share it with Senator Serval's staff, and I also shared it with the author of the bill.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Serval.
I'm happy to look at that on the floor. I got an email that was like about 2,000 words, and I didn't get that one little 10-word edit or whatever out of the email, but I'm happy. If that's all it is, I'm happy to talk about it, but that wasn't my interpretation. But
okay, well, then I guess what you're saying, Senator Serval, is if this bill gets out of this committee, you'll continue to have a conversation with the Poverty Law Center?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
What about the concerns of the propane industry?
Mr. Chairman, they came to me about 3 days ago to start to advocate. I haven't really had a chance to focus carefully on their concerns. I'm happy to talk to them as well in the next, we got over the weekend when I'll have more time to focus on this. That's kind
Okay,
of where I
it's
left it.
10:05. The Rules Committee was supposed to start 5 minutes ago.
Probably already did.
Is there a motion on this bill?
Second.
Unless there are alternative motions, please open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay, that bill reports, that's the last bill on our agenda. I'll see you all after crossover. Thank you.
Here's your manual.
Thanks.
There'll be a test.
Yeah.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.